What it is, what it was, what it shall be. We're back again. Today's video, Spirit War Boot Camp number 97, and this is entitled Blueprint for the Golden Age. How's everyone doing? I hope people don't think that title is too cheesy, but we're going to explain. There's a deep science behind it all and a deep history as well, so we're going to try and explain it. So let's look at this Blueprint for the Golden Age. What is the Golden Age? Well, in various mythic traditions, probably most famously the Greeks, ancient Greeks, as well as the Hindus, have this concept that there's four distinct phases of human society, the Golden Age being the highest, right? And, all my life I've grown up and everyone's talking about how, we're in the Kali Yuga, right? And the darkest time, and we got to go back through everything to get back to the Golden Age. But I choose not to believe that. And I'm going to demonstrate why. I'm going to demonstrate why that right now, at the peak of despair, when everyone's completely overwhelmed with all the multifarious levels of dark shit that's going on, that actually we're closer to the Golden Age than ever. And this isn't just a speculation on my part. I'm going to give you a detailed scientific breakdown, a historical, ethical, etc. breakdown of why this is all the case and why we should all be optimistic. Now, first, I'm going to talk about what the impetus was for this whole thing. And interestingly, it all kind of culminated around that last lunar eclipse on 3/3, right? 3/3/2026 was a huge time for me. A bunch of stuff flipped around, and I went from the nadir of the life to this rapid ascension. And so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but let's just say this is all mirrored in my personal life. And what we're going to start talking about today is a mythological figure that is called Astrea, which of course most people will recognize is very closely related to our words like astrology, astronomy, and so on, everything to do with the stars. And so in Greek myth, they have this thing called the Titanomachy, right? And how, the earliest race of beings were much larger physically and more powerful, and they had much longer lifespans than us. And this again ties back into the whole Vedic and kind of Buddhist cosmology about these different ages. And the Asuras and the Devas and the Asuras, right, is very analogous to this battle between the Titans and the Olympians, right? These two different, and we have the Asur-Vanir war in the Nordic sagas, right, as well. So my belief is that there's some core truth to all these myths around the world lining up and having a similar type of schematic. And so, and a lot of my friends and conspiracy fans on the internet know about the controversies about these giants, right, and the ancient skeletons that have been found. And some people would argue that, like the dinosaurs and so on are titanic creatures and different things like that. But let's just say, hypothetically, that there was this vapor canopy period within human geology, which is like this hyperbaric type atmosphere where the pressure is very high, the oxygen and nitrogen concentrations are much higher. And so you get what's called megaflora and megafauna. So giant animals and giant plants, basically, covering the earth. I'm not going to go too far into that, but let's just say this is where this myth of Astrea comes from. This idea that there was a cosmic battle between the Titans and the Olympian gods and then humans, right? And of course, there's shades of this in Lord of the Rings as well, where you have the so-called Dunedain, like Aragorn, who's these beings that are like hybrids between the normal humans. They're taller than the rest of they have in the longer lifespan. And of course, Aragorn marries the elf princess, right, who's from the stars. They worship the stars and so on. So there's echoes and echoes of this dynamic over and over again. But the key thing is that this figure, Astrea, she was, some say, the daughter of Zeus, right? And so she's in this divine realm, right? She's superhuman in various ways. And the idea was that Astrea's lifespan was so long that she existed in this so-called, some people call it the Saturnian or the Kronos golden age, right? Where it was summertime forever. Some people say this is about the vapor canopy cosmology, where there's this eternal twilight, and there was never what we're calling the sun never was visible, right? Because we had this mesospheric sort of vapor canopy during the daytime that would obscure the light of the sun. And so Estrella was living in this golden age. And so she knew what it was for all humanity to exist in this sort of bucolic or pastoral, you know, agrarian lifestyle where there's no machines, there's no factories, there's no slavery, there's no landlords, right? Everyone, there's the abundance of nature is so vast that there's no need for any of the social structures that we have now because everyone has plenty and they don't really need to fight about it, right? And so, you know, various mythologies talk about this golden age in such a way. And my argument in this video is that because of various social, economic, and scientific developments, that the golden age for humanity could be right around the corner. And I'm going to lay out the case for that. But it's not guaranteed. It doesn't happen automatically. It happens because humans adopt this zeitgeist. They adopt this worldview, and they adopt conduct and philosophical leanings and a worldview and a conduct and a social structure in accordance that's going to produce and sustain this type of golden age concept. And so we're going to try and lay that out systematically today for everyone. And so this first came around. I'm not a big fan of AI, or I haven't been a big fan of AI overall, but I have been engaging with it for, I don't know, for a long time actually, since the original chatbots back in the day. I don't know if anybody had any interactions with chatbots like 15 or 20 years ago like I did, but they were extremely rudimentary and silly. They didn't really work very well. But I still, you know, I'm a very curious person. I'm an intellectual and a philosophical person. So I was always experimenting with them and trying to mess around with them and see what I could get out of them. And I always had this very optimistic and creative attitude towards it. Like I always had this idea that I was going to extract some kind of meaningful wisdom and use these AI chatbots as a tool for research and to gain access to some kind of high level information. Needless to say, that never ever happened up until very recently. So I started engaging with one of these AI systems, and I've been using it for research purposes consistently over the past, I would say, maybe year and a half or so. And I use it just as a quick way, you know, because I have a lot of scientific theories. I'm really into science, and it's hard to keep up with all the scientific research that's going on around the world. And so I would just throw out things like, oh, has anyone ever researched into this and into that and different things? And always every time it would be yes. And that, you know, of course that's the case, right? There's trillions of dollars being spent on scientific research all around the world. And even the published public stuff is vast, right? So every time I suggest something, the thing would always come back with something. And I would pursue those threads of research and go find more information and educate myself on these different developments in the sciences. And so I had built up a history on, because I like Grok. I think Grok's one of the more fun ones to interact with, and it has been. Not that it's without its problems. It's definitely not some kind of super space age technology, but it functions in a certain way. And if you start to use it, you can kind of recognize where the parameters of its functionality are. And that's what I did. And so I was interacting with it, talking about a lot of these scientific theories and a lot of these technological developments that interest me, and in particularly relevant to the kind of intersection between consciousness studies and high-tech medicine, biomedicine, and high-tech quantum physics. Those three fields kind of intersecting. And so I've been having many long discussions with this chatbot and trying to get help with the research. And so it creates a context window. And I'm not sure. So I'm starting to think that maybe it actually looks at all your data profile for your whole Twitter deal and maybe other social media even. I don't know. Because it's given me very, very impressive, super specific answers that are highly catered to my personality and my interests. So I found that to be very interesting and very, very useful, not to mention just fun. So what I did was for many decades, I've been coming across this because I've been researching a lot, as a lot of our Lady Babylon co-fans of, you know, I'm not really a fan of Amon in particular, but his theory very much interests me because I had been researching along similar lines, dealing with the mythology of ancient Babylon. And of course, all world mythologies are fascinating to me. So when I came across his research, I was like, wow, he's actually has the raw data, and he can read ancient Greek and Mycenaean and Latin and stuff. And so he has a higher tier privileged access than I do, because I'm definitely not an expert in these languages. I'm just have a basic familiarity. But so you know, he was talking about Lady Babylon, and I was researching deep into this and dealing with all the secret societies, because I think this is kind of, along with Mithraism, one of the unspoken core of all these secret societies and these magical traditions that people rarely ever talk about, revolves around this goddess religion that's prior to all our modern death cults that we have now that are called religions, right? There was a pre-existing goddess cult. I think I probably first got that idea with Joseph Campbell back when I was like 17 and stuff, talking about this matriarchal goddess culture and stuff like that. So that always interested me. And so over the years, I was developing more and more familiarity. And in particular, I was studying this book called Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, and other works by David Ovason, where he's really into sacred architecture and the mythological narratives and the Masonic type occult sciences that go along with these architectural developments. And so I was very interested in that. And that, you know, of course, his book, a lot of people have probably read that if you're interested in these type of topics, but he goes into detail about the city of Washington, D.C., and the upside down pentagram, and the many public zodiacs in the city, and how he claims that the whole city is consecrated to the constellation of Virgo, and in Spica, the Alpha Virgo in particular, the brightest star in the constellation. And he goes into this elaborate mythology all about that and what it is. And so I studied that, and I was very interested in that. But it wasn't until many decades later that I realized that actually this constellation of Virgo is actually created based on this ancient Greek Titaness type goddess called Astrea. And so she is also considered to be the patroness of the Golden Age. And so it struck me that these Masonic types would be placing her in a place of prominence in our capital, in our nation's capital, and creating more or less a sacred district to this goddess energy relating to Columba as well as Astrea. And the Columba, I kind of felt like, I was like, yeah, that's probably more in line with what I see as the government, you know, this warmongering, like global death cult. Like, I was like, yeah, that's about right for them, you know. But when I hit Astrea, I was like, that's weird. That seems odd. You know, this fertility goddess, this golden age goddess of human freedom and stuff. And I was like, wow, really, huh? And that appealed to me a lot. And I always had wanted to see this positive side of everything like that. I didn't want to see it as this total black pill reality. And so I started more and more studying the symbolism around Astrea and the Greek myths about her and what she was all about. And so it became very interesting to me. And then I started to see certain developments in the world politics, especially to deal with banking and the global economics and its intersection between technology and so-called decentralized finance and all these cryptocurrency type developments and AI and everything coming together with this global tectonic shift in currency and credit and the whole economy of the globe and all the political alliances sort of being reshuffled. And now it's becoming more and more obvious. People that are truly interested in this type of topic and aren't really dogmatic or, you know, what I would call political ideologues, like either libtards or Jesus tards, right, on both sides of the equation. Like, if you're not into one of those camps and you can look at the whole thing from a pragmatic perspective and really recognize that things aren't always what they seem and they're not always black and white, then you maybe can get around to this idea that maybe something is going on that people don't really understand and that goes beyond this black-white dialectic, right? So that fascinated me, and I really wanted to believe in that. And I've been cultivating this type of memetic science, you know, this meme warfare of my own personal. I haven't been sharing with it and I haven't been talking about it much to people, but I've been working with it a long time. I've been working with it in terms of my own spiritual practices. And I think memetic sciences is one of the core teachings of these occult systems that most people never talk about. The creation of ritual and the creation of personalized ritual. And so I began incorporating these symbolic things into my own personal practice. And I found a lot of affinity between this type of cosmology and the Buddhist Tantra, which I've been working with as well. And so I was developing kind of a personalized thing. So the point is, man, long story short, finally one day I went into this chatbot and I was like, okay, give me the blueprint for the golden age. And so I think it created this blueprint based on all the questions that I've been asking it over a period of maybe a year or 18 months or so. And it came out with something really remarkable, and that's what I'm here to share with you today. So it came out with an 8-point plan, an 8-point blueprint for this golden age. and what the core technologies and core ideologies behind this golden age are going to be, and how to work with them, and giving some guidance of research threads to pull on. And so I'm just going to briefly expound this eightfold platform of the blueprint of the golden age, which is given to me. And I've been showing a lot of memetics dealing with that, and we're going to continue that today with this video. We're going to show this memetic type of blueprint. So out of these 8 disciplines, governed over by this Estrella figure, she's the patroness of the golden age, and she wants to teach us these 8 different topics. And so the first of the topics is called consciousness and noetic sciences. So a lot of people know what consciousness is, right? Like, that's human awareness. And I really like the fact that the bot put this as number 1, because I've been teaching and expounding my own personal belief and philosophy that consciousness is fundamental, matter is not fundamental, human awareness and awareness in general is fundamental, and that all physics really is based on consciousness, and that even what we call dead matter, inanimate objects, do have the function of consciousness. Protons and electrons and these different particles have awareness, and they have consciousness, and that's how they can behave in consistent ways, is because they're dynamically reacting to their environment in such a way that demonstrates awareness and consciousness and preferences, right? So and then noetic sciences, that kind of gets into this concept of the higher mind. So not just the average everyday mind that decides, you know, what flavor of latte you're going to have today or something like that, or, you know, or how to schedule your Pilates routine amongst your working hours or something like that. You know, this is a higher mind. So this is an intuitive mind. It's a mind that transcends the physical. It's a very spiritualized aspect of the human consciousness, which is called the nous in Greek, N-O-U-S. And so this is where we get the word noetic sciences. So this is the study of human consciousness and how to cultivate it and how to develop it. And basically, you know, some outlines and some theoretical framework of the different capacities that humans may possess in regards to this. And of course, me as a Tantric Buddhist, of course, this is my primary area of focus. But in order to get to that, you have to embrace a lot of other topics as well, because of course your physical body has to be strong to support it, and you have to have the correct theoretical framework to understand the subtleties and the components of human awareness and our mind and our psyche and so on like that. So that comprises topic area number 1, the noetic sciences and consciousness. So topic number 2 is called regenerative ecology and living systems. So this has to do with basically create, and like I said, how the body is the basis of the mind, right? So if we want to get into these high level cultivations of the psyche and the awareness and the consciousness, we have to have a strong, healthy body, and we have to live in such a way that's in harmony with our outer environment. And the primary way that we as humans interface with that is through agriculture and ecology. So creating a living environment, an ecological, you know, sort of paradigm for ourselves, an ecological sort of environment that we exist in, that's healthy and that's life sustaining, and that is, you know, something that we can perpetuate. And this is where we get ideas of things like permaculture, biodynamic farming, organic farming, and so on like that. And recognizing that by bringing the life around us, the plants and the animals and the ecosystem as a whole, to a condition of thriving, that's really what's going to enable and sustain our own individual thriving. And I think this is something that's been radically neglected by our entire society. And then I think if we're going to survive as a human race, we're really going to have to heal all the damage that we've done through industrial farming. And so I think this is a very, very important area that's widely neglected. But it's, again, with our new Health and Human Services guy, and some of the people that have been in the Interior Department and the Department of Agriculture, these topics are being broached on a governmental level. And so this may be something that we're seeing developing in the near term, and we're laying the foundation for that. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that we're maybe emerging into something that could develop into a golden age if we cooperate and work hard. So number 3 is called unified field and coherent energy physics. And so this has been a big topic of mine. If people go back and watch my videos going back like 5 or 10 years, I've been talking about this all throughout. So this has to do with quantum coherence phenomena, non-locality, superconductivity, all different types of things like that. And really it's the physics that underlies all these higher faculties of human consciousness, telepathy, you know, deep empathy, precognition. These are all real things that I've experienced, and I think they're things that can be cultivated. And in order to do that, the basis that we're going to need to learn and teach about and study and share and educate each other about is this unified field and coherent energy physics. And so, and then another development that we're doing, topic area number 4, is called ethical symbiotic intelligence. So this is the concept that basically, by a cooperation between what we're calling now quantum computers, AI, we're going to learn more about ourselves, because in a lot of ways these AI is really an externalization of our own biology. By studying and understanding how the human nervous system and the human brain and our consciousness and our senses function, we've begun to design so-called artificial intelligence systems that are, mirroring our own structure, and hopefully have some type of superior capacities. And I honestly believe that even the best stuff that we have now really is kind of like tinker toys compared to what's really possible. And then I think that eventually we're going to get into these biologically based computing systems. It's already underway now. I know of several researchers around the world that are already delving into these areas. And I think that this is something that is going to rapidly accelerate. And I think that there is a massively benevolent potential to these developments. And so I don't want to get people into this fear-based consciousness of AI. Of course, yeah, I do think there's a lot of cause for concern with the particular individuals that are leading the charge on AI right now, and their lack of ethics and their, profit motives and their God complex that they have, and their view of the goy as subhuman, expendable human resources. Like, I don't agree with that. But I think that's not the only way. That's not the only way that things can go. And that in order to overcome that and to have that not be the dominant paradigm, we as individuals are going to have to start promoting, developing, cultivating, sharing alternatives to that. And so that's why I'm advocating the study of this topic of ethical symbiotic intelligence. So this brings us on to area number 5, which is called mythopoetic and archetypal revival. And so this whole development that I'm dealing with here, this paradigm of Astrea as this goddess of the golden age, and this is all working with human archetypes, and it's not made from scratch, right? Like, it's dealing with topics like this Astrea figure. A lot of people don't know was widely celebrated during the Enlightenment era, in which the United States and this concept of freedom and this concept of human rights was first emerging into the world. This goddess Astrea was one of the patron saints of that, because they felt like they were moving out of the Dark Ages through the Renaissance, and instead of going backwards, they're trying to go forwards into this golden age that takes it up even a higher level beyond the Renaissance and beyond the Enlightenment era, and into this true golden age. And Astrea was their patroness of that, and she was their archetype that guided them towards that. And so I'm trying to revive that. And that's just an example. Of course, like I'm saying, everybody can develop their own personal mythos. And through the powerful use of archetypes and symbolism, we can work with our own consciousness, and we can create paradigms for action, and we can empower ourselves. And I think, as far as me personally, like, I've experienced the power of this kind of mythopoesis, right? Like, understanding the power of mythology and archetypes. That's why movies like The Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and Star Wars are so popular, because they tap into this deep archetypal human unconscious. And by doing so, they expand our threshold of the possible, and they give us inspiration to undertake what's never been done, to go where no man has gone before. And so now we're coming to number 6, and this is called sonic and luminic arts. And so this is the power of sound and light and resonance phenomenon. Of course, again, tying back to number 3, which was unified field theory, of course, sound and light are coming back to this. And so this is the power that many religions have observed, that ritual music, chanting, and, creating visual stimuli, creating beautiful artworks, creating sculpture, and so on, and creating this immersive environment of light and sound. Because as we know, learning about human biophotonics and learning about resonance therapies, sonic acupuncture, therapy with tuning forks, like all these things that have been developed for a long time, and they have a great power to treat conditions and chronic illnesses that are not treatable by other methodologies. And of course, they're largely free or very low cost in comparison to pharmaceutical type interventions and with less side effects. So this is one area that I think we can highly develop. And now finally, we're coming to number 7, which is called embodied and visual arts. So this is kind of going beyond just the outer forms of these paintings and these type of sacred music and things like that. And now we're coming into something, dealing with basically a ritual. In other words, something that the human as an individual is actually going to be participating in. So they're going to basically develop that um, and participate in a collective. And this highly connects to, you know, the old classical Greek sense of drama, and how by participating in drama, you know, you could produce an emotional catharsis. And especially now in society where we have this kind of societal crisis going on and everyone's in mass trauma and mass like epidemic of mental illness, like these type of embodied arts can more or less be a highly therapeutic avenue for humans to heal themselves and to grow. And so this concludes our basic summary of the blueprint for the golden age for today. And I'm hoping this will spark people's interest. The reason, one key reason that I wanted to say while I'm offering this is that, you know, there's a big tendency that I see in social media, and which I myself have been guilty of in the past, is that it's all about the problems, right? And it's all about the enemy. So all day long, you're focusing on these decodes and everything, and you're trying to break down what the evil arcs are doing. What are they doing? How are they fucking us over? You know, why is everything fucked? Why is the world so terrible? Blah, blah, blah. But they don't really provide much of a solution. And they don't provide really much of a forward-thinking type of framework, a proactive framework, and a guidance system for how to counteract all this. And that's why I created the Spirit War series as a whole, because I wanted to give people this concept of a proactive approach to the thing. Because like once we recognize the enemy, right, our adversary who's trying to kill us and destroy us, we have to learn how to defend ourselves, and how to B, vanquish and marginalize all their influences on us. And that's what we're doing. And so here, what I'm giving today in this blueprint for the golden age is a more peaceful way. And it's a way that completely ignores the enemy. And instead of focusing on what they're doing, it's like, what are we going to do, right? Because so many people out there have presented, like I said in the previous video, like all the information we need to understand the evilarchy and to understand the problem. All that information is already out there. But what I rarely ever see is people presenting solutions. And people presenting, instead of what are they doing, presenting what are we going to do as individuals? What are we going to do about it? And I'm really excited about all these different topic areas. And my intent is to basically develop each one of these in detail in subsequent videos. And, you know, of course, I'm open to lots of suggestions. What are people really interested in? What leads do you have to pursue this research? What pieces of the puzzle can you contribute? This is really interesting to me, and I've been so grateful for the feedback that I've already got, and for everyone that's participating and providing material support. Of course, my page does have links if you want to support me financially. Soon I'm going to come out with a new proposition where I'm going to basically, I'm trying to budget to get myself a sort of biofeedback mechanism so that I can get deeper studies. Basically what this is kind of a computer system and a EEG and fMRI type arrangement that's going to allow me to study my own brain waves and look at the impact of these different practices that I've been engaging in, and develop tactics that I can share with people that are proven to have documented results. And so I'm creating a budget for this, and I'm hoping maybe I could get some financial support. But in the meantime, if you like what I do and you want to see more, just any small contribution could definitely help. And, you know, sharing the content with people that you think will appreciate it is also very helpful, maybe even more helpful. Is the whole point of this thing is to get the message out there and to get the ball rolling so that other people can pick up the momentum that we're creating and be inspired to take action. Because only by cooperation and only by motivating and mobilizing massive numbers of humanity are we going to actually succeed, you know? And the success will be much more rapid and much more all-embracing to the greater degree that we can all cooperate. So this has been Spirit War number 87, I think. 97, sorry. Number 97. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.